In just a few minutes, you'll be ready to run your first review session. We'd like to share some tips we've discovered using flash feedback in our own classrooms. If you haven't already done so, we recommend you start by watching the student welcome video. Let's talk about how to set up your first assignment. The quality of the data that you and your students receive from a review session depends on the quality of your criteria and the number of reviews that each student can complete. Keeping the length of work samples to 1 paragraph or less will help your students focus on the learning criteria and also allow each student to complete multiple reviews. Ideally, each student should complete 3 or more reviews during a session. When you decide on the review criteria for your assignment, you want to make sure it's specific and appropriately challenging. We recommend writing a subjective criteria rather than a criteria that asks students to find and count errors. For example, this work sample includes descriptive language which helps the reader paint a mental picture, rather than this work sample includes fewer than 3 grammar mistakes. We recommend that you make a plan ahead of time for students who come to class without their work sample. You'll be able to see which students have submitted work samples on the teacher dashboard. You can view the work sample by clicking on the timestamp. The program will not allow students to review the work of others without submitting their own work sample first. We have found that missing the review session is often an appropriate natural consequence. And here's a few ways that you may choose to accommodate these students. They include asking them to work on their assignment and missing the review, asking them to share an outline as a work sample, or printing a few work samples from the teacher dashboard for them to review on paper. Before your first review session, we recommend leading a conversation with your students to help them understand the purpose of peer review and the best way to give and receive feedback. We recommend setting aside 10 to 20 minutes for this conversation, depending on the age of your students. Start by talking about why you have decided to do peer review early in the writing process. You may choose to share with them that scientific research has shown that peer review helps students learn what the teacher expects and helps them to do better revisions of their work. Define the term anonymous for your students. Help them understand that their classmates will not see their name on their work sample or the feedback they write for others. Discuss ways that anonymity may be broken during the review session by reading sentences aloud, for example. Make sure they understand that you will still be able to see their names on all of their work and comments. Discuss the importance of giving polite, useful feedback. Demonstrate this by giving your students examples like, I suggest that you add an example to your paragraph to help the reader understand this concept. Give an example of a rude and unhelpful comment like, I suggest that you make it better than it is now because it's not very good. Take a minute to ask your students to practice giving polite, useful feedback to each other out loud. Talk about the criteria that you will use and emphasize that this criteria is the main focus of their feedback. Share with them that you understand how tempting it is to comment on superficial details like grammar and spelling, and emphasize that it's important for their learning that they stick to the criteria. At the end of the first review session, take 1 to 2 minutes to talk with students about how they should use their feedback. Explain to them that they can report a comment violation to you if they receive a rude or offensive comment. Define the word violation for them so that they understand that the report should not be made for comments they simply disagree with or for comments that are of poor quality. Discuss how all feedback should be considered, but not all feedback has to be followed. Feedback is information that we can choose to use or disregard. Here's a quick overview of the data you'll have access to during and after the review. On the left, student names allow you to see your list of students. Colors on your students' names show up after the review session is complete and indicate how you might support students based on the peer review data. Work sample column allows you to see when a student has submitted their work, and clicking will show details of their work submission. The Reviews Completed column tells you how many work samples that student has reviewed. Share Allow column tells you whether a student is okay with you using their sample as an example for class discussion. The Shared column reminds you if you have already shared it. You can share a sample by clicking the timestamp in the work sample column. If a student reports a comment violation, you will see Yes in the Reported a Violation column. The right column, Reviews Received, gives you details about each review that was given about that student's work. Green represents completely agrees the criteria was met, yellow means somewhat agrees, and red means disagrees that the criteria was met. An exclamation point indicates that the marked comment contains a possible violation. Clicking on that bubble will allow you to review and optionally delete that comment. We recommend printing a copy of the comment before. Here's a summary of our tips for using Flash feedback in your classroom. If at any time you need help, please contact us via email and we'll be in touch. We look forward to hearing from you about your experience with Flash feedback.